See, said Hermione when Harry and Ron had finished. The dog must be guarding Flamel's Sorcerer's Stone. I bet he asked Dumbledore to keep it safe for him because they're friends and he knew someone was after it. That's why he wanted the stone moved out of Gringotts. A stone that makes gold and stops you from ever dying, said Harry. No wonder Snape's after it. Anyone would want it. And no wonder we couldn't find Flamel in that study of recent developments in wizardry, said Ron. He's not exactly recent if he's 665, is he? The next morning, in Defense Against the Dark Arts, while copying down different ways of treating werewolf bites, Harry and Ron were still discussing what to do with the Sorcerer's Stone if they had one. It wasn't until Ron said he'd buy his own Quidditch team that Harry remembered about Snape and the coming match. I'm going to play, he told Ron and Hermione. If I don't, all the Slytherins will think I'm just too scared to face Snape. I'll show them. It'll really wipe the smiles off their faces if we win. As the match drew nearer, however, Harry became more and more nervous, whatever he told Ron and Hermione. The rest of the team wasn't too calm either. The idea of overtaking Slytherin in the house championship was wonderful. No one had done it. Sorry, guys. I blanked out and lost my place. Let me try that again. The idea of overtaking Slytherin in the house championship was wonderful. No one had done it for 7 years. But would they be allowed to, with such a biased referee? Harry didn't know whether he was imagining things or not, but he seemed to keep running into Snape wherever he went. At times, he even wondered whether Snape was following him, trying to catch him on his own. Potions lessons were turning into a sort of weekly torture. Snape was so horrible to Harry. Could Snape possibly know they had found out about the Sorcerer's Stone? Harry didn't see how he could, yet sometimes he had the horrible feeling that Snape could read minds. Harry knew when they wished him good luck outside the locker rooms the next afternoon that Hermione and Ron were wondering whether they'd ever see him alive again. This wasn't what you'd call comforting. Harry had heard hardly a word of Wood's pep talk as he pulled on his Quidditch robes and picked up his Nimbus 2000. Ron and Hermione, meanwhile, had found a place in the stands next to Neville, who couldn't understand why they looked so grim and worried, or why they had both brought their wands to the match. Little did Harry know that Ron and Hermione had been secretly practicing the leg locker curse. They had gotten the idea from Malfoy using it on Neville and were ready to use it on Snape if he showed any sign of wanting to hurt Harry. Don't forget, it's locomotor mortis, Hermione muttered as Ron slipped his wand up his sleeve. I know, Ron snapped. Don't nag. Back in the locker room, Wood had taken Harry aside. Don't want to pressure you, Potter, but if we ever need an early capture of the snitch, it's now. Finish the game before Snape can favor Hufflepuff too much. The whole school's out there, said Fred Weasley, peering out of the door. Even, blimey, Dumbledore's come to watch. Harry's heart did a somersault. Dumbledore? He said, dashing to the door to make sure. Fred was right. There was no mistaking that silver beard. Harry could have laughed, I'm getting tongue-tied, you guys. I'm so sorry. Hold on a second. Harry could have laughed out loud with relief. He was safe. There was simply no way that Snape would dare to try to hurt him if Dumbledore was watching. Perhaps that was why Snape was looking so angry as the teams marched onto the field, something that Ron noticed too. I've never seen Snape look so mean, he told Hermione. Look, they're off. Ouch! Something had poked Ron in the back of the head. It was Malfoy. Oh, sorry, Weasley. Didn't see you there. Malfoy grinned broadly at Crabbe and Goyle. Wondering how long Potter's going to stay on his broom this time? Anyone want to bet? What about you, Weasley? Ron didn't answer. Snape had just awarded Hufflepuff a penalty because George Weasley had hit a bludger at him. Hermione, who had all her fingers crossed in her lap, was squinting fixedly at Harry, who was circling the game like a hawk, looking for the snitch. You know how I think they choose people for the Gryffindor team, said Malfoy loudly a few minutes later, as Snape awarded Hufflepuff another penalty for no reason at all. It's people they feel sorry for. See, there's Potter, who's got no parents, and then there's the Weasleys, who've got no money. You should be on the team, Longbottom. You've got no brains. Neville went bright red, but turned in his seat to face Malfoy. I'm worth 12 of you, Malfoy, he stammered. Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle howled with laughter. But Ron, still not daring to take his eyes from the game, said, You tell him, Neville. Longbottom, if brains were gold, you'd be poorer than Weasley, and that's saying something. Ron's nerves were already stretched to the breaking point with anxiety about Harry. I'm warning you, Malfoy. One more word. Ron, said Hermione suddenly. Harry! What? Where? Harry had suddenly gone into a spectacular dive, which drew gasps and cheers from the crowd. Hermione stood up, her crossed fingers in her mouth, as Harry streaked toward the ground like a bullet. You're in luck, Weasley. Potter's obviously spotted some money on the ground, said Malfoy. Ron snapped. Before Malfoy knew what was happening, Ron was on top of him, wrestling him to the ground. Neville hesitated, then clambered over the back of his seat to help. Come on, Harry! Hermione screamed, leaping onto her seat to watch Harry as he sped straight at Snape. She didn't even notice Malfoy and Ron rolling around under her seat, or the scuffles and yelps coming from the whirl of fists that was Neville, Crabbe, and Goyle. Up in the air, Snape turned on his broomstick just in time to see something scarlet shoot past him, missing him by inches. The next second, Harry had pulled out of the dive, his arm raised in triumph, the snitch clasped in his hand. The stands erupted. It had to be a record. No one could ever remember the snitch being caught so quickly. Ron! Ron! Where are you? The game's over. Harry's won. We've won. Gryffindor is in the lead, shrieked Hermione, dancing up and down in her seat and hugging Parvati Patil in the row in front. Harry jumped off his broom a foot from the ground. He couldn't believe it. He had done it. The game was over. It had barely lasted 5 minutes. As Gryffindors came spilling onto the field, he saw Snape land nearby, white-faced and tight-lipped. Then Harry felt a hand on his shoulder and looked up at Dumbledore's smiling face. Well done, said Dumbledore quietly, so that only Harry could hear. Nice to see you haven't been brooding about that mirror. Been keeping busy. Excellent. Snape spat bitterly on the ground.